Hello, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in, to all of you out in the audience. Thank you for joining us today for our inaugural session of Screens Unscripted. This series of fireside chats is meant as an opportunity for all of us to explore innovations and trends in digital signage and display technology with industry subject matter experts. My name is Jonathan Braun. For those of you I have not met, I do see a few familiar names out in the audience. I'm the principal of Braun Consulting, and I'll be your host today. I'm also the director of the Digital Signage Experts Group and a board of directors member for the Digital Signage Federation. I am joined by my good friend Terrence Boyd, who is the Senior Strategy and Business Development Manager for Sony, one of our sponsors, and also a hopefully proud advisory council member to the Digital Signage Federation. And today we have a very, very special guest that I'm looking forward to speaking with. But just before I ask him to introduce himself, we'll keep everybody in suspense. Just a bit of housekeeping for all of you out in the audience. As you probably heard from when the broadcast went live, everyone's going to be on mute. So please use the chat or Q&A boxes. It's in the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToWebinar panel. If you moved it, you're on your own. I have no idea where you put it, so you'll have to find that. But you can use that to communicate directly with myself or our esteemed panel, and I will help facilitate those questions to our guests as we go. Now, I know the question's going to come up, so I'm going to head this off beforehand. We will be recording this for everyone. So if any of your colleagues are not able to join us, we will be offering that up to everyone after we finish. So you will get a link via email from GoToWebinar, and I believe our friends at Sony will be hosting this on YouTube as well. Now, one thing I'll real quickly point out, this is just the start of a series of discussions, although we're starting off pretty strong, as you're about to see. With industry luminaries. And so we hope you'll stay tuned for future episodes. If you do have any topic suggestions, please share them with myself or with Terrence. We would love to hear that because this is all about providing you all with valuable information, not marketing, and hopefully some really good insights from our guests. Speaking of, we have a very special guest today that I am pleased to get to have a conversation with from our friends at AppSpace. I'm really looking forward to this, discussing workplace experience and digital communication. So real quickly, before I jump in and I ask our guest to introduce himself, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Sony. Terrence, anything you'd like to share with the audience?
No, Jonathan, first of all, appreciate you, supporting this and helping to moderate, and as well, Thomas, for being a part of our inaugural episode here on Screens Unscripted. So we're really looking forward to this entire series, and really wanted to kind of start things off with yourself, Thomas, and kind of guide us and guide the audience through this thought leadership process, and really kind of talk about some of the innovative, visionary, processes that you put in place every day, not only at AppSpace, but just how you're leading the digital signage industry as a whole. So we're really looking forward to that, and I'm glad to have you and look forward to the conversation.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Terrence. Appreciate it. And I agree, by the way. So the guest of honor. So I'd like to, most of all, thank you for being here, Thomas. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience, maybe give them a little bit about your role at AppSpace and what AppSpace does, just in case anyone's not familiar.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Jonathan, thanks for hosting me. And Terrence and Sony, thanks so much for asking me to join on this very first session. I'm Thomas, Chief Innovation Officer at AppSpace. I spend a lot of my time with customers understanding upcoming challenges and making sure that we build technology to address those. AppSpace is the leading workplace experience platform. We partner with Sony to deliver features such as digital signage, but we also do a lot more around the team member experience in the hybrid workplace that we all live in today. So really excited to be here and to have an opportunity to talk about the future and what's coming.
Absolutely, I greatly appreciate that. Yeah, I was really looking forward to it as well when Terrence shared with me that you were going to be our first guest on the new series. I'm going, oh, this is going to be fun, because I have no doubt that you have very strong opinions about a lot of things going on in the industry. I know I do as well. We'll even get Terrence to chime in from time to time here because I'd like to get his perspective. You don't get away for free, buddy. You got to participate some too. But this is a really important topic because the whole modernization of the workplace and the workforce is a trend that impacts everybody in the industry, not just digital signage. It's having a lot of, I spent a week with some consultants and they've been discussing it too. So I think it impacts pretty much everyone. And I'm willing to bet you're going to agree, right, Thomas?
Absolutely, it does impact everyone.
Yeah, yeah, you bet. So I think a great place to start, because I think most people are going to be more familiar with AppSpace as a CMS company. I know you do a lot more, but most people are going to be familiar with AppSpace as a CMS company. So maybe let's start with your thoughts on the impact of digital signage in a modern workplace, and what does that have to do with a modern workforce as we think about the changes to the employee experience?
Well, that's a big one to start with. I think if I look over the last 12 years that I've been at AppSpace, in my early days, digital signage was a nice to have technology, something that would help in the workplace, give it a more modern feel, engage with employees. But it was really not something that was business critical. Now, with the pandemic that we went through in the last few years, we really saw a big shift. And today, digital signage is considered mission critical. It's a must have. And you'll see digital signage popping up everywhere. In the corporate world, whether it's in the lobby, providing visitors and employees live insights on what's happening in the building, what's the environmental insights like air quality, people count, all that very critical data, but you'll see it everywhere in the floors, on the neighborhoods, even down to the desks. So I think that's the first thing is for people who still think signage is nice to have, they're probably a little bit behind. Today, it is absolutely a critical communication channel for employee well-being and safety. The other thing is signage is way beyond the big TV that you have in the lobby. Every piece of glass that's connected to the physical workplace, whether it is a visitor kiosk, a wayfinding kiosk, a scheduling panel outside the meeting room, a video device inside the meeting room, they're all digital signs. And what you really how you differentiate them is by the experience you're assigning to them. Is it a playlist of content, or is it an interactive experience where you're browsing content on demand or navigating the workplace? But they're all digital signs. So digital signage is much broader than what a lot of people think it is. And I think that's really, really important to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that as well, where a lot of people assume digital signage, they think to menu boards or advertising. And yes, that's part of it, but those were the early adopters, where in corporate communications, I like how you even pointed out the meeting room scheduling panels are an opportunity to communicate, because it's not just about, oh, is that conference room busy, but what's going on around campus, because that's another touch point. I mean, it's even gotten to where aren't people really considering strategies down to, I think you mentioned it, at the desk level, where I'm trying to reach people at either like a desktop monitor or maybe even, like their mobile device, right? Because aren't we really changing how we deal with workspaces? I think that kind of plays into some other things that you and the team at AppSpace have been innovating in, right? Where we're even thinking about hybrid work environments now, where it's not just I'm at one single desk or I'm at one single cube or whatever, where I may be in different areas based on the needs of the company. Because aren't we really kind of seeing that transition to not necessarily all work remote? I think more companies are starting to pull people back in the office, but more hybrid, right? Does that kind of make sense?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think the hybrid workplace is the new normal. Whether you're back in the office 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or you're always remote, it doesn't really matter. But it is a hybrid workplace experience. And we've got to engage with the employee early on in the day when people get up and get online, and throughout their journey transitioning from the digital into the physical workplace. In order to do that, we have to have a seamless transition between the two, and we need to make sure that communication flows seamlessly across the devices that you're exposed to as a user, your phone, your desktop, your tablet when you're at home or on the go, or the digital signs in the lobbies, the kiosk when you're in the physical workplace. And you can connect the two by making sure that the content strategy that you're deploying allows you to link that user journey. Now, what's interesting with this hybrid workplace and the digital experience is historically digital signage was like linear TV. And if you ask my kids about linear TV, they don't know what it is, but it's basically, sitting in front of a schedule that was defined by you by a broadcaster and just watching through it. And when there's ads, you listen to ads and you don't get really a choice. And that's what was digital signage back in the day. But I think digital signage today is much bigger than that. It's the ability for the user to select which content is relevant to them. It's the ability for the digital sign to understand what's the audience in France so that you can start narrowcasting content that is tailored to the audience, to the people. But it's also connecting the digital and the physical. So if I'm creating content in my intranet around an important announcement, and I'm pushing that to the digital sign, I'm amplifying the intranet on the digital sign because the digital sign is a high impactful communication channel. The user attention is grabbed and they see that there's an ability to learn more by scanning a QR code. They scan the QR code, opens up the app on their phone, and in the app they can read additional information related to that announcement. They can even react to it. When they react, the reactions appear on the digital sign. And what that drives is engagement from other users who are seeing that content is alive. It's actually living the fact that it's being consumed by users on personal devices. And it therefore attracts more people and it creates that constant engagement loop where digital signage is no longer just a passive playlist that you're looking at, but it is actually an engaging communication channel. I think that's a huge difference between what we considered digital signage a few years ago and what digital signage can be today for organizations.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad to hear you say that because I think that's an important aspect. And I think a lot of our colleagues would agree, at least I hope they would, because honestly, it's a transition, right? Where you nailed it. We've gone from linear TV, passive broadcasting to narrowcasting. Everybody throws around different terms. I still think, and this is something that I've discussed with a lot of other people in the industry, we need to come up with a better name than just calling it digital signage. I don't have any brilliant ideas. If you come up with something, we'll give you credit for it. But it really is illustrating that change. And I liked some of the comments, you know, the humble QR code. One of the good things that COVID did was it saved the QR code from extinction because that was almost like a lost art and now it's back. And I don't just mean the irritating scan here to order at the restaurant, right? But you hit the really important one. I think that was kind of a debate we started to have early prior to the pandemic where everybody was concerned about this competing with signage. And I think you just illustrated a future where this is an augmentation, especially in a modern workspace where this tool is critical. I mean, we all carry an external world brain in our pockets now, right? Where this is so critical for me as an employee, email, phone communication, texting, but all the apps, right? So if I can scan a code, get that information here, take it with me, I'm more likely to retain and engage. So that's all important. But does that kind of almost reach down to like that desk level where, okay, I don't know where I'm going. So I think you illustrated something important with wayfinding where that's gotten more important. So I go and I'm coming into the office, right? So let's think about that digital experience for an employee, right? I come into the office, I'm walking in cold, I don't know where I'm going to be assigned. So I have to go to a kiosk and check in, right? And then from there, I would go to a wayfinding display to figure out where in the office I'm at if I don't know the layout. And I may be at a different office than I'm at, right? And then I've got to have some kind of tool to get me there. Wouldn't that kind of bridge the gap where I've got maybe some directions on my phone or an app that helps me get there, and then I get to the desk, and now I got to hook everything up. So there's a screen there. Would that be another opportunity if I've got the ability to do so, to be providing information there at the desktop monitor level while I'm plugging my laptop into the dock? Would that make sense, do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think you bring up a good point, and it's probably even more than that. So when you think about the way we're going back to the office today, for most of us, it's no longer at our assigned seat, but we're booking a desk or we're booking a seat as part of a neighborhood. Now, the downside of that is the environment is no longer personal. It's not my personal workspace. It's a workspace that I'm going to be using for a period of time. But very similar to the hospitality world that we're all very familiar with, when you book a hotel room through one of the apps, when you arrive and you check in at the reception, by the time you get to your room, the TV there is already personalized to you as a user. It will welcome you as an individual person with your name on the screen, eventually give you your balance of points you have with that hotel brand. It's going to give you that very personal feel that this is my hotel room for the duration of my stay. Well, when you arrive in the physical workplace and you booked your seat at the neighborhood and you arrived in the neighborhood, already the digital signs within that neighborhood are aware you're going to be there because we have the reservation data. They even potentially know you've already checked in at the reception, so we know you're there. So we can start narrowcasting the content to the audience that's going to be sitting within that neighborhood. And if that neighborhood was allocated to sales and marketing, then you can start putting sales and marketing content so that you're more relevant to the user. Then by the time you arrive at your desk, you may have a docking station. We integrate, for example, with the Logidocks. You have a Logidock sitting there, and it's plugged into a monitor. That monitor is displaying digital signage content for you as a personal user with your preferred content on it. And I think that's really important, is that now that we have understanding on who's in the office and where they're going to be sitting and who they're going to be interacting with, we can leverage the digital communication channels like digital signage to narrowcast content and to make the experience more personal. And that's what we're all looking for. At home, our experience on our Sony TV is very personal. When I open up my TV, it's really content that's relevant to me as a user. Well, it's going to be the same now in the physical workplace. And I think that makes it a reason for users to even want more to go back into the office.
Yeah, because there does need to be some kind of incentive why you want to come back. And I personally am pro. I do like working in an office. I mean, I've worked from home for forever. I'm not quite as remote as you are, but I mean, I've worked from home for forever. I do like it when I get to go work at an office, but I kind of get that. And I think what might be a challenge, and maybe that's something we should explore a little bit further, is you're painting a really beautiful picture of how we can bring together all these different technologies, but there are some connectors there, right? Where now we're asking a company to think about not just desktop monitors and laptop docks, but potentially sensors and maybe some dedicated hardware for like desk availability, maybe notifications or other tools, right? So is that really an obstacle, or does that ultimately become something worthwhile for a company to entertain and for us to make sure we're bringing up? Because it really does kind of mean we have all of our different platforms need to work together, right? As we're building kind of one unified fabric of technology. Does that kind of make sense too?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think what's really important is there's a lot of technology in the physical workplace. In fact, way more than at home, but at home, everything seems more integrated, which is interesting. And that's the consumer world. Now in AppSpace, we see a real consumerization of the workplace experience. So how do we bring all those technologies together, and how does the experience for the team member get better? If you think about it, the sensors that are being deployed, either because they exist in video devices or because they're standalone sensors, air quality, room temperature, humidity, people count, presence, all those sensors generate a tremendous amount of data. Now, facilities will use that data to understand how the workplace is utilized. But from a team member, if I'm going into the office, the first thing that I absolutely want to know is that this is a safe space for me to go back to. So one of the largest pharmaceutical company has deployed sensors all over their building, and they're returning the data back to the user. So the first thing you see in the morning when you book a room, a desk, or a neighborhood is you see what are the environmental insights. And then when you arrive in the office, the first thing you see in the lobby is how many people have checked into the building, where are people distributed across the floor, what's the CO2 level on the third floor and specifically in your neighborhood. So as a user, you feel that you have full transparency from the organization, which is amazing. You know that the environment is safe, so you feel even more inclined to go further into the physical workplace. And that's driving the user experience. So I think connecting and getting this data and leveraging digital signage to return the data back to the user is fundamental. And we see it in the consumer world. If you're a runner and you're using a running app, what you love the most about the running app, it's all the data it gives you back. And so I think it's time to return the data back to the team member, and digital signage, because of its very high impact on users, is a great way to deliver that data back to the user.
Right.
So I think there's a big play there for sure around devices. Now, let's not be mistaken. If you're running products in silos, you don't get all of this. So it's really important to integrate and to consolidate point products into platform plays. And of course, I'm preaching for ourselves in this case. As AppSpace, we see ourselves as a workplace experience platform because digital signage is a feature of the platform. So if I'm booking my desks through AppSpace, it is logical to be able to show that data on a digital sign because it all came from the same source. So that makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more challenging if you're running point products.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And don't worry, you're more than welcome to plug what AppSpace does. We appreciate that. That's part of why we invited you. But that you do bring up an interesting point. So one of the questions I personally wanted to ask you, because I wanted your opinion, I've got my own thoughts as well, but I wanted your opinion, was what you're talking about all this really dense information that hopefully we're now able to capture and manage, but how can we effectively manage just that sheer amount of data available to staff? If we're presenting all of this to them, how do we manage that and help deal with the fact that we've got all these different segments of different people, different roles, different areas within a company? You know, that seems like a pretty daunting task to me. So what are your thoughts on how we can manage that type of situation effectively within a company? Because it's going to have some kind of strategy, right?
Well, I'm a firm believer that in technology, things happen because at the right time, because they're needed at that time. I think tremendous amount of data that we're generating today is an outcome of the last 10 years and certainly the last 5 years. And the arrival of AI in the last 2 years is a result of all that data that's available, or partially a result of all that data. You've got to treat and read the data now. So AI is going to allow you to run or read the data, classify the data, and start building trends and understand what is happening, has happened, what is currently happening, and what could you do better. And I see it in the comms world, in the corp comms world. Any HR person is looking to have better employee engagement, because better employee engagement means more productivity, it means higher retention. I mean, you've got a lot of benefits in it. So they want to understand how they can leverage the different communication channels to reach out to their user. So they need to understand historically, depending on the content that I pushed out and on which communication channel, what response did I have, what engagement, what was my overall sentiment analysis. And based on that, what can AI tell me I should be doing next time I want to push that announcement? How can I leverage digital signage to generate that awareness that will redirect my users in the internet where they can actually take an action to complete a task? I think that's the power of AI today. It's this ability to read the data, but also help recommend and start driving algorithm that will allow us to make sure that we're reaching the audience. And I think that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and thank you, by the way, because that was one of the first like legitimately sane AI conversations I've had with anybody, where it's either they think AI is like unicorn dust and can do everything, or they think AI is completely just a marketing buzzword. And I agree with you 100%, by the way. That is a very practical use for AI technology. And I'm willing to bet there were a bunch of people sitting out in the audience going, when are they going to bring up the buzzword? So it was going to have to happen sooner or later, right? But no, that's a good point. And I would also think that considering digital signage in corporate, you're dealing with a lot of diverse people who may not have content development skills. And wouldn't there also be implications in AI-based tools to say, okay, if I need to generate a piece of content that looks and works effectively, AI might also be able to assist with that, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably the most common use of AI today in the consumer space. It's to generate content, whether it's to generate an image, an article, a summarization, or even an audio narration of the content. We leverage AI. Now, in the digital signage world, everyone believes they're great at creating content. But it's not true, because often digital signage content looks very bad, very poor.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I remember back maybe 10 years ago, we introduced the concept of branded HTML5 cards that would be responsive on a portrait or landscape digital signage, and where the branding would be locked in. So as a user, all you could do is type in your text, upload your image, and it would look good no matter what. But I was still requiring the user to come up with the right buzzwords that would grab the user's attention, and finding the right media that would grab the user's attention. Today with AI, you can actually leverage the tools to create that perfect image on brand that will grab people's attention. And then making sure that your caption that's going to show on the digital sign is the right caption to say, hey, I want to read more. And then when I scan the QR code, I get to more information and I can read through it. Now, the other thing it's doing is giving the ability to consume the content in the preferred format. I love digital signage because it gives me access to information that I normally don't see it through other communication channel because I don't have the time to look for it. And with digital signage, it grabs my attention. But I don't always have the time to go and read for more. But the ability to scan the QR code and have that content in an audio format that's narrated back to me, that I can add in a playlist on my phone, and while I'm going for a walk or run or a commute, I can actually listen to it. That's extremely powerful. And I think that's what AI does from a generative capability. It gives everyone the ability to create engaging content, and it gives every consumer of content the ability to consume it in the best format that works for them.
Yeah, that absolutely, I 100% agree. And I just really appreciate having a realistic conversation with someone about AI, because there's been so much doom and gloom and like, oh, this could cause extinction of the human race. And I'm like, really? I think we've all seen Terminator. We're not going to plug the nukes into the AI. I think we figured that out a while ago. But no, I 100% get you. And it's such an important tool and an aspect of how things are working. And you know, I love this whole idea, because I've worked in a couple of different my clients. They've got divisions called like workspace modernization or workforce modernization, and so I'm seeing a lot of design work around these types of areas. And so I'm coming at it from a kind of a hardware perspective, because my background is mostly display technology, and that's how I got into digital signage as a whole many years ago. I'm not stating how many because I don't want to date anybody on the call. None of us need to feel any older than we are, I promise. But you know, the reality is we've seen so many changes, and people are thinking about this. Like desk hoteling is now becoming a thing where, okay, there's indicators on desks. You're doing everything via QR. Actually, it's a great question. I mean, I think it's another one I wanted to ask and kind of explore a little bit. So we've got all this information and we've got all these different tools to help us create and communicate and kind of optimize. But in your opinion, how can we make this more, and we mentioned QR codes earlier, but how can we make this more of a two-way communication path, where the employees can take advantage of this overall infrastructure as well to communicate back with leadership?
Well, I think that's a good question. If you think about the way we're creating content every day in the consumer world, it's using our phone, right? And I think that if I'm in a neighborhood and the digital sign that is in that neighborhood is providing content that is narrowcasted to my team, I want to make sure that I can update information to that digital sign without having to log into an admin console and going into a content library to do that. And in fact, I want to be able to do that either when I'm on the go or in the office directly from my phone, by just uploading a video, an image, typing in quick text, and making sure that the content is going to look great immediately as it's posted on the digital sign, because you're using behind a workflow that puts the content into buckets that are formatted for high impactful signage content. So AI will help make everyone good authors. Everyone can now create good engaging content, but you still need something to generate the content, or somewhere to generate the content. And I think mobile is how people want to do it, because that's how they do it in social media channels. So removing the need for a desktop and to be logged into an administrative console to create engaging content on digital signage is super important. And I think the ability to do this from the phone should be a priority for any organization, because what we know is what works on digital signage is content by the people for the people, not content by corporate for everyone. That doesn't work. You can have it as part of a playlist, but what really grabs people is when it's content by the people for the people. So give power back to the people to generate engaging content. And in order to do that, make it easy for them by giving them AI tools, but most importantly also by allowing them to do that from the personal device that they use all the time, which is their phone.
Yeah, because I mean, if you've got content from the corporation to the people, you're back to broadcasting. It's that very old thinking of kind of one way broad communication. Even if you target it down to the neighborhood in an office, it's still not necessarily as effective. And so we're kind of back to square one. Why have you got all these advanced tools if you're not really effectively using them, right?
Well, that's right. And when I'm at home, I'll get on my Sony TV and I'll pull up my preferred streaming app. When I pull up my streaming app, it's not just a single stream of content. I can navigate based on preferences, themes across different type of content. Why does it have to be any different in the physical workplace? Why can I not go to a similar TV, either using touch or a remote control or even my phone, select my preferred channel of content that I want to see on that screen, view it on, and even contribute to it by adding or reacting to content. I think that's the evolution. If I was to bring my kids into the office 5 years ago, they would have thought that it looked so old. But today they love it. They come in, they sit here in the office, and they'll go and start navigating content, and they'll learn about AppSpace because they're going to be able to select content that's relevant to them. Hey, what are the social activities AppSpace is running, and what's corporate and whatever. And I think that's very, very powerful.
Yeah, because that's kind of something that we're seeing everywhere. Like, okay, so I log into my Android account or my Google account on an Android TV, and it's already making recommendations for content. It's making recommendations for apps. It's got my frequently used apps because we've got an algorithm attached to that looks at my usage. And that kind of thing was magic a few years ago, but now that's almost kind of basic, where if we add in the implications, as you illustrated it, of AI, where we're analyzing all that usage data and all that information, and we have a much broader palette of that data inside the workplace. Because, you know, at home, you're capturing just the information of, oh, you know, this is Thomas versus this is Terrence, this is Jonathan, and, oh, you know, oh, these are the shows you watch, but you don't have like traffic patterns. You know, the TVs don't know, well, I was watching this in the living room necessarily, and then I moved to the bedroom. But yet at the workplace, we have that. So wouldn't that kind of technology, if applied correctly, help us further adapt and adjust to target the content to the user using that same kind of algorithmic approach?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I don't know if you do it at home, but at my home, I downloaded the AppSpace app on the Android TV. It's registered back to corporate, and it's narrowcasting content related to product innovation, which is the team I'm part of. So I personalized my home workplace, leveraging my consumer TV at home, and I'm expecting the same when I'm in the office. And there's no more physical boundaries to corporate communication in the physical workplace. Today, my office is an extension of the physical workplace, and therefore a consumer device like an Android TV can become a corporate device when I'm logging into it. And I think, I mean, talk to communicators and HR, this is giving them access to the home space with high impactful communication. That's a very powerful thing. And it didn't cost me any additional hardware. I already have my Android TV. I just downloaded the app and had it registered back to corporate, and it's true. In fact, it's the same thing we do today with MTR endpoint, Microsoft Teams rooms. When you have a Microsoft Teams room, it's in the meeting room for collaboration purposes, for video conferencing, whiteboarding, whatever it is. But when you're not in a video call, it's a digital sign. And that digital sign will allow you to communicate with the audience inside the meeting room. We know who are the users because they booked a workspace, so we can personalize the content. But we can also use it to educate the users. Hey, you're in a Microsoft Teams room, and in order to better use this video technology, here are tips and tricks, and here's a QR code where you can go and learn more about the technology. So imagine how all those devices that were originally meant for different purpose at home or in the office can suddenly be an extension to the digital signage network. And that's extremely powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's kind of funny because I think the discussion a lot of us would immediately have is, do I really want that in my home? And then, you know, how do we motivate people to do that? But you did hit another really important thing I was going to bring up, which was the convergence of UCC into this whole discussion. So you hit the Microsoft Teams room. So I'm going to check that off of my talking points list. So there you go. I think that's really important. Now, you know, so what I think we're really highlighting is any software provider that's going to work in this space, that's going to be this all-encompassing, needs to really be platform agnostic, right? So we've got to be willing to tackle everything from like displays with SoC to phones, although if you've got a Android SoC app, you've got a phone app, right? To the desktop. So does that kind of make sense as well, that you really do have to approach it from that kind of device agnostic standpoint, but then how is that manageable?
Yeah, I mean, we very early on at AppSpace made it a company culture to be completely hardware and OS agnostic. We have to be able to display on any type of screen, portrait, landscape, video walls, it doesn't matter, but also smaller displays like tablets, desktop, and phones. Obviously, you have a different experience on a phone than you have on a TV. Therefore, we do have two apps. We have one app for the workplace experience devices. Those are the bigger devices that are managed by corporate in the physical workplace. And what you do is you assign an experience. Hey, you're a scheduling panel, you're a wayfinding kiosk, or you're a digital sign, and that's what you do. When you're on your phone, it's a personal device, and therefore the experience is way more interactive. It respects a lot of the user experiences on phone. The content is personal to you as a user. The features you have is personal. But at the core behind, it's the same product. It's the same platform that delivers the message. And I think that's what you have when you're watching a streaming app, whether you're on your phone, a tablet, or a smart TV. The experience will be different, but the content is the same. It depends who's playing with it. So I think that, keeping that in mind, that the consumer experience drives the market, and we just need to make sure that in the workplace, in the corporate world, we take the best of the consumer technology and make it sure we apply it in the corporate world. Because if we want to attract people to come in the office, we have to give them an experience that is at least as good as what they have at home, if not better. And you mentioned, not sure that I would want a digital sign or I would want my home office to become my work office. We didn't have a choice for a few years.
Fair, that's true, yeah.
And if you had to deal with it, you might as well make it as effective as possible. And we all invested in dual monitors and a good quality chair. And well, at home, my TV became my digital sign. In this way, I was informed when a new employee was started. I was informed when someone was praised. I was informed when we celebrated a win. And I didn't have to look for it. It was just there on the screen next to me. And in the evening, I was just turn it off and switch over to my streaming app, and all was good.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Well, I wanted to make sure we left a few minutes to have some conversation with our audience. So anyone out there, I've got a couple of questions that I saw come in. So we're going to address those for you. But if anyone would like to ask any other questions of Thomas or myself or even Terrence, he's been quiet, sitting there in the background, although he's been nodding, so I know he's paying attention. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask, I know I've got a few here already. So we'll be more than happy to answer those. Just throw those in your Q&A in the GoToWebinar panel. And let's tackle some of these questions here, because I think we got a couple of good ones. The first one, I'm hoping this wasn't one of the plants from Terrence in the audience here, so I'm assuming not. I'll get you, buddy. How can software tools like AppSpace easily combine with agile SoC displays like Bravia to customize the experience for an employee in the office? That one came in a few minutes ago. I think we've probably covered that pretty well, don't you think?
I think we did. I mean, I think the idea that AppSpace runs natively on a Bravia display is part of that consumerized workplace experience, where consumerization at home, I'll download any app that I want on my TV. Well, in the office, I should be able to do the same. I get the app when it's running. I'm understanding of whether the screen is portrait or landscape. I'm understanding the resolution, and therefore I'm able to make sure that the content that is playing on it is optimized for the device that's there. Now, if I'm able to also understand where that device is physically connected, I'm able to see what is the ideal audience in front of that screen at different times of the day, and therefore able to personalize the content for the time of the day and for the audience. So, but yeah, I definitely think that this makes it so much easier to deploy at scale and to use the technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, the second question I saw kind of relates to that. So room scheduling is underrated and undersold because it can be about much more than scheduling. Man, this is a novel. This is great. Aside from the digital signage angle, if admins and AV integrators could see into a room, in quotes, see the exact hardware and software available in the room, couldn't we get closer to knowing not just what employees are using that room, but also creating a map of the AV ecosystem in both one room and all rooms combined? Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, but it's a complex one to answer, but yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, understanding the AV components of a meeting room or multiple meeting rooms next to each other should help the user who's looking to book a room, to book a workspace that's optimized for their needs. And then leveraging, and we mentioned it, the technology to better educate the user, whether it's when you enter the room, understanding on the scheduling panel, is there someone already in that room? Is that room available? Until when do I have it booked? What technology is available in the room? Is it a MTR endpoint, or is it a projector, or whatever else still exists? How many chairs are there? Being able to book the workspace and have rooms combined into a bigger workspace set up for the purpose of my meeting. I mean, yeah, now that we have access to all of the data and that we have the technology to display the information on personal devices or workplace devices, all of that is possible.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so I've got this because I know we're going to come up on time here in a short period, and we want to be respectful of your schedule. Again, Thomas, thank you for joining us for this one. But I do have, this is a little bit of a controversial question, and I'm going to throw it out because hopefully you and I can have a little bit of a discussion around this one. But this is definitely coming from someone who was thinking AppSpace more as just a CMS company, which obviously you're much more than that. But I still want your take on it, so I'm going to go. In the industry, companies tend to change CMS providers about every 3 years. How would you advise building a relationship that can overcome this trend?
So can you repeat what happens every 3 years? Sorry, I missed that.
That companies, end users tend to change CMS providers about every 3 years.
That's interesting. I didn't know it was as frequent as that. We don't see that at AppSpace, and we're lucky, I guess. But I guess it's by making sure that the CMS you select does more than just push content to a large format display. It's making sure that the content that you produce through your content management system allows you to reach out to users across multiple communication channels, whether that's digital signage, an app on your phone or on your tablet, but also deliver content that is very different flavor, not only rich media content, but experiences. A kiosk is an experience, more it's content, but packed into an experience. An interactive TV where you can navigate content on demand is an experience, and content is behind the experience. So I think the ability to do that gives so much more value and potential down the road. Also being prepared that your CMS doesn't do only one thing for one reason. CMS that only do digital signage may be impacted when something like a pandemic hits and suddenly there's no one left in the office. And suddenly you have to engage with your users in a new tool like an app on your phone or in an existing app you're using. Your CMS needs to be able to address that and help you as an organization address new challenges that were not planned for. And if you do that, then why do you need to change CMS every 2 years? Why do you need to go through the burden of learning a new tool if your platform is flexible enough to address new challenges coming up?
Yeah, well, and you hit on exactly what I thought you might, because again, knowing something about AppSpace before we got together on the call, you know, obviously this is someone who is thinking about it purely from a signage angle, and you do much more than that. But I think that's an important thing to illustrate that to the audience here, that what you were just discussing is also criteria they should be using to consider who their CMS partners are, whether they're going to be consuming that product themselves or selling it, because it needs to be a bigger discussion than just traditional digital signage like what we knew a number of years ago.
Absolutely.
I absolutely agree. All right, I know we're coming up on time. I do want to give everybody a chance, if you have any last questions, to throw it in the chat. While we're doing that, Terrence, anything you'd like to add or any questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, so just real quick, you know, Thomas is, and hopefully there's no echo here, but I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious when we talk about, like, for instance, the innovations in hardware. I think that, you know, sometimes there's hardware innovations that come around that can create a proliferation of new ideas and software and experiences. And then sometimes it's the other way around, where software really drives the development of hardware to become something more for that experience. What have you noticed, you know, say pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, that's happened with hardware? Has there been developments or evolution of technologies that have really allowed the experience to become, especially in the workplace, to become what you envision and where you'd like to see it go? Like what are some examples of some of that technology?
Well, I definitely think SOC was pre-pandemic, but that has given accessibility to digital signage to a lot more organization at a much larger scale. The costs of deploying it is much easier today. The devices are cheaper, and that's always what we're after. High quality devices at a good price point, so you can deploy at higher scale, because higher scale means more stickiness and engagement of your audience. But what we've seen is a lot of new devices that didn't exist before. Just the desk puck was something we were not talking about 5 years ago. And today you have a lot of those smaller displays that fit a need. They display the availability of a desk, they display the name of who booked it, they display a QR code that allows you to interact. I think we've seen a lot more of that. Visitor kiosks are becoming super popular. Pre-pandemic, you would still sign in on a piece of paper. Today, you pre-register online. When you arrive, you present a QR code in front of a display. That display has a camera built in. That's becoming more common now. And the fact that you have a camera, you can use it for different purposes. As I mentioned, scanning a QR code to check you in, but also understanding your audience, who's in front of the screen, what's the dwell time in front of the screen, how many eyeballs are you capturing, which allows you to monitor the engagement. I think we're seeing just hardware is picking up and evolving rapidly because there's more demand for more devices that are more sophisticated. Software just needs to leverage the hardware components to deliver the experiences. But yeah, I would say when we used to say a digital signage deal in the corporate world was 1,000 screens, we're much further than that. Now we're maybe 5x that amount of screens in the corporate world, just because of the number of devices, the scheduling panels, the video devices, the desk pucks on the desk, the kiosks, the visitor kiosks. You just, unbelievable the amount of devices today.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. No, Jonathan, that was just wanted to ask that.
Of course, absolutely. I mean, you're on the panel. You're allowed to ask questions too and comment. No, I appreciate that. So I'm not seeing any other questions coming back in from the audience. So what I'll say is we'll probably start to wrap up here. But Thomas, if any of our audience members would like to learn more about what AppSpace is doing, where can they find out more information about you all?
Well, it's always, the best place is always to go to appspace.com. It's easy to remember. You'll have access to all the information, everything we do. You can also create a free account, which is pretty cool nowadays to be able to do that in the corporate world. Create your free account, register your TV at home, download the app, and see how all this works. I think that's an easy way to get started with AppSpace. If you need additional information, just contact our team. We'll happily join and help you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you. Terrence, if anybody wants to learn about Sony solutions, where can they go find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. You can log on at pro.sony.com, where you can see the full selection of all of our commercial AV products, from our professional displays to our network and SRG type cameras. We cover a broad array of technologies for the education space, for the office space, and beyond. So I'd love to see you guys there.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, Thomas. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to share all of your insights with the audience and being part of our inaugural episode of Screens Unscripted. Really has been a great discussion, and I personally really appreciate the time together today. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks to both of you. It was an honor. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely a privilege. Terrence, thank you and the team at Sony for sponsoring, of course, as always. And thank you to all of our audience out there. You were all fantastic. I know how busy everybody is, so spending some time with us, carving some time out of your schedule to listen and to learn, really appreciate it. Please, by all means, share feedback. I'll send out a quick survey after the call. And if you have any other suggestions for topics or anyone else you'd like to hear from, please do let Terrence and I know so we can include that in future planning. So again, thanks everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.